Welcome to Last Call with Jamion and Christian. Our guests today, John Ross and Daniel Marks. John is currently the CEO of Get in the Game 101, an incredible website with educational tools and articles on how to get a job in the NBA. Before that, John was with the Portland Trail Blazers for 14 seasons in various roles, including video coordinator. Daniel is currently chief of strategist for Howard University men's basketball, focused on community and alumni engagement and NIL. Before that, Daniel spent 9 seasons with the Milwaukee Bucks, doing a variety of things, including managing college basketball prospects and information, and a regional scout for the NBA, G League, and college levels. Excited to have you guys on here. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, appreciate you having us on, Jamion.
Well, this came across. I saw on Twitter this event. And I was like, man, this is pretty interesting stuff, And last year I went to Summer League. I was bugging Daniel like crazy on trying to figure out what to do at NBA Summer League. And so obviously a course on what to do and how to meet people and how to do your part. I thought it was really interesting. So I'm excited you guys are taking the time not only to share, but to jump on today.
No, yeah, I've done a few of John's courses and started, reading John's articles on LinkedIn, from Get in the Game, and was like, and John, through a mutual friend, Matt McKay, had asked me to be on some of his shows, and always, found them to be informative and reasonably priced and trying to pay it forward to people. I think the one thing I've realized, and John realized, and probably you, Jamion, as well, because, you and I have had a lot of career conversations, like you always want to pay it forward and help people and take the time to help young people where they're aspiring to go, but there's only so much time in a day, and all of those emails and calls start to build up, and you can get overwhelmed, and doing them on an individual basis is like, oh man, it can get really repetitive. So John, creating these courses and being able to talk to groups of people and have them be able to network is really cool. And I've really enjoyed being a part of it and excited to co-host one for the first time.
Yeah. John, I want to take it to you real quick. I mean, obviously 14 seasons in the NBA, that's a long time in the NBA. What makes you want to give in the way that you're giving now?
Yeah. When I was looking to get in the NBA, like most people, it's like, you got this dream, you want to work in the NBA, but it's like, what do I do? And like, the first thing I did was I Googled NBA jobs, and it's just like, I started there. I actually got connected with Coach Richie McKay, who we talked about earlier. And he's like, I'll let you come to our basketball practices. He was a D1 coach. He's like, you can write scouting reports on our players, and that's it. I said, cool. So I just started coming to practices, writing reports and emailing them to him. Eventually he invited me into his office, and we started having some conversations. I learned how to break down game film. So I had some tools, and, applied with different teams. It's like kind of going through the whole rejection phase and not really knowing what to do. Eventually landed an internship with the Portland Trail Blazers, and which turned into a job. And I was there for 15 seasons. And so through that time, I just learned a lot. And then one of my main roles with the Blazers became helping hire new interns. So I just started to interview every year. And like Daniel said, you're getting emails and you're trying to respond to people. And so several years ago, I was like, I'm just going to write an article about what students should do if they want to work in the NBA. So I wrote an article, like 3 ways to get an NBA internship. And that just kind of went mini viral on LinkedIn and things. And so I wrote another one, like 3 ways to keep an NBA internship. And then I just started writing. I love to write. So I just started writing articles to help students know what to do. And kind of same thing, like Daniel said, like you're getting reached out by hundreds and hundreds. You want to respond to everybody, but you just can't. So I just like, hey, here's some 1, 2, 3s of things you can do. And then, once I got let go by the Blazers, I was like, I'm going to turn this into like some online courses. And then that's kind of where I started that. And then that's where me and Daniel met, like he said, and we just kind of been running with it from there.
Good. I want to, you hit on something there that I think's super important. And I'm going to ask each of you guys to kind of elaborate on it. You talked about rejection season. I always say, if people listen to our show, you hear me talk about, working in sales. And I think working in sales at some point early on where you have to cold call people is super important, because I think there's a lot to learn in being rejected and picking yourself up and doing it again and learning what worked and what didn't work. If Daniel, you could start, can you talk a little bit just about like being rejected and how you have to learn how to respond from it? And then we'll take it over to you, Joe.
Yeah. So for me, the rejection really hit in May of 2013. So I was a student manager at Vanderbilt University for 4 years. Loved my experience there. My two passions are sports and politics. I did internships in both while I was in college. Didn't enjoy the politics internship and really enjoyed the sports internship. So I was like, politics is going to be a passion, a hobby. I still follow it greatly. It's been really cool to be at Howard, and a lot of the stuff we've done on Capitol Hill this year has been really neat for me. But I was like, I want to work in sports. And, back then, like Facebook was the primary social media forum before Instagram and Twitter really took off. And, all my friends from college are posting, just got a job at Deloitte, starting as an intro consultant, just got a job at Morgan Stanley, just got accepted into grad school. And I'm sitting there like, I reached out to all these NBA teams. I'd sent reports. I'd networked with a lot of people because we had some NBA prospects, and like, I'm back home and I don't have any jobs. And, I had some interviews with people, but like nothing guaranteed. And it's like May hits, June hits, July hits. I go to summer league. I do have a couple interviews. I get rejected by the San Antonio Spurs. I was a finalist for their internship, and their internship program is considered like the creme de la creme of NBA internships. So I was really hoping to get that one. I didn't get it. I also didn't get the Atlanta Hawks internship. I was talking to a number of G League teams. A lot of them are defunct now. The Springfield Armor, the Dakota Wizards, which then became the Santa Cruz Warriors, the Sioux Falls Skyforce, and the Idaho Stampede, John is familiar with because they were the Blazers affiliate for a couple of years. And then through a relationship I had, I got a call about the Bucks and like, hey, we might have an internship opening and you're our guy, but we don't know if it's going to happen, but don't take anything until you hear from us. And I'll remember I was meeting a friend in New York City, and we were walking the Brooklyn Bridge when I got that call, and I was like so excited. And then, the Sunday I had a follow-up interview with the Santa Cruz Warriors, and I texted the Bucks and I was like, hey, I had a really good interview with Kirk Lacob, who was the GM at the time, and I think I'm going to get offered something this week based on the conversation. And they're like, don't take anything. And then, a couple of weeks later, it was a couple of days later, I'm sitting at home and upstairs, just watching TV, and I get a call from John Horst, who is then the director of basketball operations, now is the, GM of the team. And John calls and he's like, hey, do you want to come to Milwaukee? And I was like, yeah. And then like, kind of like the scene out of Wedding Crashers when Will Ferrell's like, mom, the meatloaf, my mom said like, lunch is ready. Do you want your, a turkey sandwich? So it's like, so he's like, oh, are you, what does your mom want? I was like, mom, I'm on the phone. Like literally my dream was coming true. And, she's, preparing lunch, which was a nice benefit of living at home for that summer. But it was arduous. And there's a lot of like dead time where you're just like waiting, because as going through college searches, John, as going through like a lot of times the intern search is literally the last position to get filled for a calendar year. So it's like you have to be willing to wait a summer, wait even into the fall before you have any certainty, because it's like they want to go through the draft, then they want to get through free agency, then they go to summer league, and then everyone in the NBA wants nothing to do with anything for like 6 weeks until Labor Day. So it was a lot of waiting. It was a lot of persistence. And I tell people like the biggest lesson I can teach someone is if you don't get a response, if you don't get a reply, it can be really discouraging. And you can say, man, this person, I can't believe they didn't take the time to reply. Until you're on the other side of that, you just have no idea how many people are out there sending emails and sending things. And like, I try to clean out my inbox once a month, and I'll like see like 2 emails, and I'm like, I don't know how that was marked as read, but like, I don't remember reading it. And so that is kind of a long-winded answer to that question.
Yeah. John, what about you? Like, talk about that rejection phase like that. I think that's super important for people to understand just how incredibly hard it is. It's not impossible, but just really hard. Can you talk a little bit about your rejection story?
Absolutely. I mean, that's one of those things where you look back on it like fondly, like, wow, I made it through that. But in the heat of it, it's like devastating. But so my first interview I actually got was with the Boston Celtics, and it was right when they acquired KG and Paul Pierce. And I was like, oh my goodness, like this is God's plan for my life. I'm headed to Boston. And they called me and they told me hey, we don't have it in our budget to fly you up here, but we'll do a Zoom interview with you. And I said, don't worry, I'm headed to Boston this weekend. And I just bought a plane ticket and I flew to Boston. And that's one of the things I recommend to students now is like, if you can get face to face with people, it's a game changer. And so I flew up to Boston and like I walked into the doors and it was like Danny Ainge and Doc Rivers. And then Brian Adams was the video coordinator at the time who was interviewing me. And I was just like, mind blown, seeing the rafters. They take me to the video room. There's 20 basketball games. They're like, we need someone to watch all these games. And I'm like, this is a job, you know? And so that's when like my heart was all in. I was a Boston Celtic and I didn't get the internship and I was devastated. And I had already told my current job that I was planning on leaving. So they're like, you know, what's the plan? So now I'm like getting demoted at work and I'm trying to get an MBA and I wanted to stay on the East Coast at the time. So I was contacting like Atlanta, Charlotte, Orlando, and just like HR departments, Dobos, and like no one's getting back to me. I'm applying for, you know, anything from business to tickets to basketball and just not getting any traction. And so, you know, eventually I'm like, Daniel, I'm like trying to get in the G League. I'm like, I got to get into basketball somewhere. And that's why I say the face-to-face thing is so important because Brian Adams, even though I didn't get the internship in Boston, he recommended me to Caleb Canales and the Portland Trailblazers because he'd met me, he liked me. They just didn't hire me. And that's where you kind of learn that rejection isn't the end all. It's like they can't hire 10, 20 people. So they might like you, but they only have one spot. But everybody in the NBA world is connected. So you know, you make a good impression with someone and they're able to recommend you to someone else. And then that's something I ended up doing is like, I would interview 100 interns. I'd love 10 of them. We could only hire one, but I would call my buddies around the league and I got someone and they would start getting hired by other teams. And that's when I was like, oh, like this is a thing. But yeah, eventually Portland offered me an internship there. And I said yes. And the next day I packed everything I owned in my car in Virginia and drove across the country and landed in Portland.
Yeah, you know, I love it, and I think the face to face is such a good, is such a interesting thing to talk about. You know, when you talk about like Final Four, like I'll get people hit me up about trying to get into college basketball, and I'll say, well, you got to go to the Final Four, or you know, obviously NBA Summer League has really become the same type of event, and they'll always say, well, you know, I don't know if I'm gonna meet enough people, and you know, they kind of give you the runaround, and I'm like, but you can't meet someone if you're not there. Mm-hmm. Right. And it could be someone that you just meet in the hallway walking through that creates a conversation that changes your life, gives you an opportunity or gives you some FaceTime to something, you know, and so I think going to those kind of events are super important. You guys have obviously decided to do a class basically on like how to handle Summer League. I don't want you to elaborate too much about it, but I want you to elaborate just on like the importance of having a plan and a strategy when you go out there.
Yeah. So I'll start. So my first summer league was 2013 because everyone said if you want to get into NBA, if you want to meet people, you got to go to summer league or Portsmouth. And Portsmouth, I was still in college and wanted to enjoy my last couple weekends at Vanderbilt with my friends. And I was like, I'm not gonna go there. I'll go to summer league. So I went to summer league. My first summer league, 2013. It's actually a really cool story. So Steve Chingang was a player at Vanderbilt with me, who was represented by an agent named Jafar Chufani. And Jafar also represented Darius Theus from VCU. And Jafar and I had gotten to know each other. And we were both, Jafar was kind of a boutique agent, didn't really have any big name clients, no NBA clients, certainly. And he was going to Summer League and he's like, hey, I got this really good deal at the Luxor for like $30 a night. So, you know, the Luxor on the Vegas scheme of hotels is considered towards the bottom of the food chain, but I was like, hey, I'll take it. And, you know, got a flight, went out there for a few days. I met with some people and then I was just so overwhelmed. It's like, oh, Kermit Washington. I read Breaks of the Game and like, he's standing right there. And then it's Danny Ferry, and then RC Buford. And then, you know, the rookies are walking around the halls and I just had no idea what to do. And I knew people out there, but like everyone had like their teams that they were with or like friends, and you didn't want to be like the person that's just kind of awkwardly hovering. And it was a very overwhelming and overstimulating experience for me. And Summer League, to be honest with you, is kind of a very humbling experience once you're in the NBA, because I had thought about, trying to make a transition out of the league to college or doing something else on the sports side for probably like 2 to 3 years before I ended up making the move to Howard. But I would go to summer league and I'd see dozens of people reaching out to me or talking to other people. I want to get a job. Oh, do you know of any openings with this? Or can you put me in touch with this person? I just had a conversation with them, and can you make a reference? And I'm like, man, I would be crazy to leave this job because there's dozens and hundreds of people that want it. So like, why would I do it? And then, go back to it, and to have like the courage to kind of go through and make that choice. Summer league was one of those things. Like for me, it was an impediment for a while because it was like, I was so afraid of being that person, because there's a lot of people, some of those people are fresh out of college, and then some of them are 10-year vets who just got let go and don't have anything, and they're hunting for jobs too. So it's a unique experience. And I think being able to kind of help people navigate through it, whether it's someone going through a firing, whether it's someone who just wants to make the most of their time, whether someone looking for a job, like it's a very overwhelming thing, and everyone tells you to go, but no one tells you what to do or how to act when you're there. And one of the things people get really turned off on is the people that are overbearing or annoying or, in your face at summer league. Like if I don't like being around you for 10 minutes, I'm definitely not going to recommend someone be around you 8 hours a day.
Yeah, my first summer league experience, I was already working with the Trailblazers, and I went out to summer league as a video coordinator, assistant coach, and like, just like, Daniel said, it's like I'm sitting in the bleachers before our game and I'm next to Greg Popovich and Doc Rivers. And I'm like, what is this? I'm like, how did I not ever go to this before? I was like, I would have gone as a kid if I knew just how the access you have to coaches, management, players is pretty unparalleled. They do a really great job. But just some like things like Daniel said of like, one, Daniel's the first person in one of my classes to tell all the students, like, turn on your cameras. Like, even in our Zoom courses, half the cameras are usually off and people just have their names. And it's like, no, like you need people to see your face. And then same with like Daniel said, getting, hundreds of messages and everything. And so what I started doing is, and that's where, like, even at Summer League, everybody's trying to, work up. So it's like, you got these people who aren't working in the NBA trying to connect with NBA staffers, but those NBA staffers are trying to connect with management. Management's meeting with owners. And so it's like everybody's up. So it's like people who are like, hey, let's go to lunch or coffee. It's like no one's got time for that. It's like you got to take advantage of the 2 minutes in the hallway. And like that might be what you're there for. And so that's where kind of like we said, it's like, and you got to know how to handle that. If you're like passing out your resume, people are probably going to throw it away. If you give them a flash drive, there's no way they're putting that in their computer. So like, it's like you're just meeting people, and it's almost basic where, and like Daniel said, you just want to, like, I don't know what I always tell people. It's like, you got to have experience, you got to have a skill set, something to offer teams. But once it comes to like, you have those things, it's, are you likable? Do people want to spend time with you? It's not like who had the highest GPA or who worked the most years. It's like, do they want to sit next to you for 8 to 16 hours a day? And so ultimately the people who are getting hired are people you like to kick it with. And so even at Summer League, it's like, you can kind of feel like I'll meet with someone for 2 to 5 minutes. And then I might go, hey, come sit with me at the game. Like, let's watch a game together. And then you can really get a feel for them, or like, hey, let's meet the rest of the staff. So what I always tell people is just like, once you get there, it's like you have the opportunity to meet people and take advantage of it, whether it's 30 seconds or 2 minutes. Don't expect much because everyone's in a hurry. Everyone's going from place to place, but it's just a golden opportunity to connect with people out there.
Yeah, I would agree. Last year I had a chance to go, and obviously we do Speakeasy Media, so I got a chance to go as a media member, which was unique because I get the chance to sit with the coaches and with management and everybody there. And, I got a whole different side of it. I've been to Summer League a bunch of times as a college coach. I'll come and watch games, and, I'd still mingle and meet everybody. I was amazed at how much it's grown in the last 10 years. Yeah. Right. I mean, it's such a bigger event now. So Daniel, I can definitely understand like feeling a little overwhelmed with how many people are around. And now it's like, there's even more cameras. I mean, there's probably 50 times more cameras and people around. There's people walking around with their entourages, and their videographers are walking around with them. I mean, there's a lot going on. So being in that environment and learning how to kind of handle yourself, I do think is super important. As you guys are as you guys are starting to prepare some of these kind of courses, I want to take this to John really, like, because you're really done so much coursework. Like, if you haven't gone to his webpage yet, you gotta go to it. It's got so many references on there. The pages that you can read. I mean, it's really good. Like, I dove into it a good bit today, and I'm gonna keep diving into it. And I was like, man, this is really, really good stuff. I felt like today I was like looking at like a secret gem, but we have to share it with our audience. So, obviously you have a passion for sharing and building that. What goes into you wanting to create a course? Like, when you start seeing, whatever happens, when do you say we need a course on this? How do you decide what's important for people to learn?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. It kind of started. So, like I said, I worked the Blazers 15 years. And then after the whole Neil Shea thing, Neil got fired. I worked for Neil. So a couple months later, I was fired. I wasn't overly happy with how it happened. No one ever is. And so I didn't even know if I needed a break from basketball. And I didn't even know if I wanted to. I didn't watch basketball for about a year after just watching every single game for 15 years. And so anyway, one of my passions is humanitarian work and helping people, and the war in Ukraine had started. So I was like, I'm going to Ukraine. So I went to Ukraine, started working with refugees out there. And while I was out there, I don't know, sometimes when you're just in a different space in life, you start to think differently. And I was just like, I still love the NBA draft and I love people. I was like, I should have a course around the draft. And so I came back to America. And I created a draft course, and it was like a week before it started, and we had like 35 people sign up for it. And I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. And we had a lot of fun. And then from those students, like some of them were getting interviews in the NBA and getting actual like jobs in the G League. And then it was around that time, and Daniel noticed this last class. He's like, man, a lot of people are asking about Summer League. And so we had a lot of students in our draft course asking about Summer League. So I was like, oh, I should do a Summer League course. So we did our first Summer League course last year. And then within that, it's like, I know there's a lot of other like companies in the sports education market, Sports Business Classroom and SMWW and a lot of others. And kind of and I've talked to people from those companies and have good relationships. And there was one company telling me, they're like, we're trying to be number one in sports education. Like, what are you doing? I was like, I'm not trying to be number one. I'm just trying to help people. Like, I'm not trying to make this a full-time gig or anything. It's like, I just have a passion for helping students. So I try to make it to where people have access to it and I can help them make the best decisions for them in their career and their journey. And I think one of the things that draws people to my writing is I'm just very honest about my experiences. I feel like a lot of people sell the NBA dream, and it's really hard to get an opportunity in the NBA. Like me and Daniel were obviously very lucky and blessed to timing, whatever happened for us to get opportunities. Some people can't get those opportunities, and there's things you can do to help give yourself the best opportunity. But that's where I just like really preach to people just to enjoy the journey. Because if you're enjoying basketball, enjoying the next steps, because there's no guarantees you'll ever get. I mean, even for me and Dave, it's like my dream is to be a GM. I don't know if I'll ever be a GM. I got fired a year ago. So it's like, none of us are really, getting everything we want. But if you can enjoy the path and the journey along the way, then to me, that's success.
Yeah. I would say you've been fired. I've been fired. I don't think Daniel's been fired. So you're
no, but I know people have certainly wanted to fire me.
And I think that's
furloughed. I've been furloughed during COVID. I got furloughed.
Okay, so furloughed, so you get the vibe a little bit. It's different though. Furlough, you're going to get a chance to come back. But I would say like being fired, it's part of the business, right? And I think understanding that that's always a possibility. And then recognizing that the power of those relationships, like you need relationships to move up, but you need relationships to bounce back. You need, you need those things for a lot of different reasons. And you experience it a lot when I got fired, the number of text messages that I got from people that I might have tried to help out one time, or I might have emailed back and maybe no one else emailed them back. So I think the power of those relationships are super important. Like you said, like you want to be around people that you want to be around with, that you want to hang out with. And just having that kind of personality, I think, really does help. And so I think speaking of that relationship and understanding that, in sport, there's a high probability you're going to get fired. I hope you never get fired. And I hope you never get fired, but there's a high probability that you will. I mean, Bill Belichick got fired with the Cleveland Browns. I mean, he's the greatest coach of all time, so those things are going to sort of happen along the way. And so you're doing all these things. You guys talk about paying it forward. so you can be prepared and have a nice landing spot. Daniel, now you partner with a lot of people. Like, one thing I love about Daniel is like he partners and he hustles and connects people. What made you want to partner with John so much, that you guys do so many things together?
So the first reason kind of that attracted me to John is just the person who recommended John to me, Matt McKay. So Matt was one of the people I met at my first summer league, and he was incredibly gracious because I was interviewing with Sean Kiley, who John also worked with the Blazers, about an internship with the Idaho Stampede. And Matt took so much time to just talk to me about his experience as an intern with Portland. And I was just really appreciative of his perspective and kind of insight. And we stayed in touch once I got in the league, and Matt was with Portland, and then he moved to Charlotte. And then as he was growing out his business, Pro Insight, I was helping him with some stuff, and my, charitable initiative, Scouting and Scavenging, was kind of taken off, and Matt was really involved. And, John had done some similar like humanitarian type work and had put that in some of his writing. So I was like, if he's getting recommended by Matt, was reading his articles. I thought they were really interesting and really on point and very to the point. Like, a lot of people tend to ramble, and John's articles are very easily digestible, like 2 to 4 minutes most of the time. So I was like, yeah, I'll speak on this course. And the other thing too, during COVID, I was getting a lot of texts from people like, I want to get into the industry, but there's a hiring freeze and there's no jobs. And like, what do I do? And I was really overwhelmed. So I was like, you know what? We're all sitting at home. I'm going to put on a Zoom, like how to break into the NBA. And I got 7 other NBA people from multiple teams to be part of the Zoom. And we had, within like 3 days of announcing it to like hosting it, there was 240 people on the Zoom. And I was like, whoa. It ended up getting Zoom bombed. Like, some white supremacist like came in and was just shouting epithets at me and some of the other guests. And I was like, this was in the early days of Zoom. So I'm like, what the hell?
How do I get this person off?
How do I stop this? How do I mute? Like, I'm pressing buttons. People are calling me. I'm like sweating bullets. And then, I hosted a couple of others during Zoom. One that you were a part of, Jamion, about, sports and education in college. And I just really enjoyed having the conversations and like talking to people. And when John, asked me to be a part of it, it was kind of one of those things where I'm like, yeah, and it's a good opportunity to talk to a lot of people at once. So it's like I can spend an hour and really, give insight. Whereas, in 10 different 15-minute phone calls, it's like you're always having other stuff to do, and like someone else might call you. And if it's like a Zoom setting, you're kind of more focused and locked in. So that was kind of what attracted me to John in the first place. And then I've just really enjoyed being a part of the courses. I was part of his trade deadline course, his draft course. And I was like, so many people always hit me up about Summer League. I was like, John, would you want to partner on something? And he's like, we've done a Summer League one in the past, but would love to bring you on. So all of the people that have been reaching out to me, I'm like, hey, look, I'm going to be on this course. It's 2 nights. It's 4 hours. You've got myself, multiple other NBA people. Like, I'm running our, Jamion, this, like, summer camp season and summer session 2 move in. And it's like all this stuff. And I just don't have the bandwidth to return all these calls and emails. So I'm like, hey, sign up for this course. I'll answer any questions you want, and you'll get way more because you're getting a lot of other people as well.
I love it. I love it. We're going to wrap up here, but I'm appreciative you all coming on here. One last time, why should people tune in on Tuesday and Wednesday for this course?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say, one, I think it's beneficial to anyone trying to break into the NBA. Obviously, it's geared towards Summer League. But to me, a lot of these things are just principles. Like I said, my main principles for people are get experience, have a skill, and then be likable, have good character. Like, we're checking your social medias, we're going through, we're seeing who you are, what you're about. But yeah, these courses in particular, like Daniel said, you go to Summer League and you can feel really overwhelmed. And, whether you're there for 2 days, 3 days, 5 days, you want to make the most of it. And so one thing I always say too, it's more connections than content. So, you're going to meet in our course probably at least 8 people who've worked in the NBA, and at least half of those, myself included, are going to be at Summer League, and I'm available at Summer League for people to meet. And so that's one of the hardest things is like, how do you make a connection? How do you meet people? And one thing I do is like in last year's course, I brought on, 4 people who had talked to me the previous year at Summer League and got jobs in the NBA. And then I'm like, hey, come, they're all like, and that's one thing Daniel brought up earlier. Like, people in the NBA want to pay it forward. Like there were people that gave us an opportunity and helped us out along the way. And I don't think people always know that, like, no, we're here to help you. It's hard to help, 100 people individually, but we can help, 100 people together. Even when I go to Summer League with the Blazers, I would always host like a coffee breakfast. And I would bring like the 25 people on LinkedIn who'd hit me up and wanted an internship. I'd be like, meet here. And so same thing as Summer League. We're going to try to help connect people with people out there and help give some principles of things you can do. And then have some actual people there you can meet and connect with.
Yeah. And I would say, the reason to take this course, like if you think about it, those old MasterCard commercials where it's like, buying a steak dinner, $200, beer, $53, memories like priceless. So it's one of those things where, you go out to Summer League and people tell you to go there. It's a big expense, especially if you're coming from the East Coast, hotels, food in Vegas is probably the most expensive of any city in America. Airline fare and, people, $700, $800, $1,000 to be out there, depending on how long you're out there, you're not credentialed. So you have to buy tickets and those ticket prices have gone up. So, it's a very small investment to make to really make that other, how much you're spending, be meaningful, because I know a lot of people who have gone to Summer League and were like, man, I just spent $1,200 and I'm not sure what I really got out of it. From a connection standpoint, from a networking standpoint, from a job standpoint. And so, it's, $79.99 for the course. You can use code NBA for $10 off. It's, 4 hours with a lot of great speakers, including guest speakers. And it's one of those things where it's like, you just having knowledge and having like some type of baseline of what to expect, even if you've been to Summer League before, I think it could just be really helpful because it's such a competitive environment. You mentioned it, Jamion, how crowded it's gotten. Like those hallways are buzzing and it's like, okay, how do you approach this person? How do you make this connection? What do you do when you follow up? Because, you don't want to be the person that every Monday, hey, is there an update? Hey, is there an update? Hey, is there an update? It's like a lot of times the people you talk to, like John and myself, like we can like say we want this candidate, but at the end of the day, it's the GM or the head coach that has to sign off on it. And like a lot of times they're not really prioritizing it. So you don't want to be that person. So it kind of is a very holistic 360 view of everything about the Summer League experience, whether from going there to leaving there and then maintaining what you've learned there throughout the year.
I love it. Well, we do this thing on last call here, and Daniel knows what's coming because he's listened to the show. And it's last call at the end of the night. The bartenders rung the bell. On your left side, you have someone who's retired. On your right side, you have someone who's still actively working. What 2 people do you want to end the night with? I'll let Daniel go first because I'm sure he's got something.
Can the retired person be someone that's deceased?
Yeah, of course, but no family. People try to throw their moms and dads in there.
So a personal hero of mine and someone I've read and watched, Winston Churchill, like just his life is really fascinating to me. He was a failed military commander during World War I and then saved the world from Nazism in World War II with his steadfast determination to, fight when a lot of other countries had folded, and what he did with Britain and his personality. And that was one of the best museums I've ever gone to. If anyone ever goes to London, the Churchill War Rooms, highly recommend. So always wanted to be around him. In terms of someone living and still active in their career, I would say Michael Rubin.
Okay, why Michael Rubin?
So I don't know Michael. I know people that know Michael, who worked for the Sixers. Drew Hanlon's a good friend of mine, and him and Michael have done some stuff together with Joel Embiid. And just Michael, what he did during COVID-19 when he was selling those like experiences and getting all these celebrities to say like, I'll sell my Super Bowl ring or a flight, and really rallying people to good. And, what he's done with Fanatics, and he's kind of like myself, who's always been like a huge sports fan, but was never able to play at the highest levels. But he's basically touching every aspect of sports, from he's owned a team to, the Fanatics company, the merchandising side. He does mentoring for draft prospects. He's done, sports through philanthropy through, what he's done with Meek Mill and some of his criminal justice foundation work. And he's just like almost like a sports renaissance man. And his career has always been really interesting to me.
I love it. Daniel, where can people find you?
You can find me on LinkedIn, Daniel Marks. Pretty active on there. You can find me on Twitter at DGM591. You can also follow the Howard University men's basketball accounts on Instagram and Twitter at HU Men's BB. We've done a lot of great stuff on and off the court this year. So recommend you follow those as well.
John, what about you? Who's beside you at the end of the night?
All right. Yeah, that's a great question. And my mind was spinning when you said that. First, I was thinking basketball people. Then you went with Churchill, and I was like, oh, we can think beyond basketball.
Of course.
I think, not even trying to be political, but I'll go Barack Obama, because just an incredible mind and thinker and orator and with people. And I got to hear, kind of not meet him handshake, but meet him in person. And when he came to speak at the Nike campus here in Portland, and just like his ability to remember every single person there and what their job was, and to communicate and make people feel empowered. And just, anyone in that kind of position in the world, one of the most recognizable people I would love to just spend time around someone who's been in that position and how they've handled and their role in life in that. And just really admire beyond politics is how he acted as a president with his family and having dinner with his family every night, and just all those things where it's like, I don't know, even in basketball, people get so caught up in their career, and it's like the president spent time with his family every night and had dinner. And it's like, I just found how he conducted himself very meaningful. And then on my other side, I'm going to go with my guy, Caleb Canales, who hired me with the Blazers, but, became like a brother and a mentor to me, still to this day. And, just if it's at the end of the night, you just want someone you can kick it with. And we're probably going to talk about fantasy football and other sports and all kinds of things like that. And so those would be the two guys I'm going to kick it with in my night.
I love it. John, where can we find you?
On socials. Well, John Ross is like one of the most popular names out there, so hard to find John Ross. But so you can find Joe Rowe _W_, which no one's gonna remember. But and then Get in the Game 101 on most socials, and then my Substack, where I put most of my content, is getinthegame101.substack.com. So people can reach me through that as well.
I love it. Thanks for joining us on another episode of Last Call. We will see you soon. Thank you for joining us on The Last Call, powered by Speakeasy, where careers grow through relationships and relationships grow through Speakeasy. We hope you enjoyed it, and we look forward to connecting with you soon.